My daughter's neighbor said, "Stop." As I opened the door, my heart sank at what he told me. I held the little cardboard box against my chest as I climbed the short walkway to my daughter's front door. My name is Kayla Donovan, though Clara rarely says my name anymore. The cold stung my fingers, but the box felt warm in my hands, as if the memories inside it still carried heat. Clara's old wooden horse, the tiny stuffed duck she used to sleep with, and the beaded bracelet she made me in second grade were wrapped inside. I thought maybe, just maybe, my grandson would want to touch something that once belonged to his mother when she still loved me. I knocked softly. I did not want to startle anyone, and, truth be told, I did not want to give Clara any reason to say I was aggressive or intrusive. The porch smelled like their new jasmine candle, and for a moment I let myself imagine Clara opening the door with a smile, asking why I did not come sooner. That fantasy shattered the moment the knob turned. Clara flung the door open as if to swat away a stray animal, her face twisted instantly, not with surprise but with disgust. "What are you doing here? You could at least call first," she snapped while scanning the neighborhood, as though horrified someone might see her own mother standing at her doorstep. I opened my mouth to answer, but she kept going. "Do you have any idea what the neighbors think when you show up like this? You always look like you walked straight out of a thrift store dumpster." She said it loud, far louder than she needed to, and I saw her eyes flick sideways toward Rory in the living room. She wanted him to hear. She wanted him to applaud. I kept my voice calm, soft, the way mothers do when they hope softness can fix what shouting never did. "I just came to bring something for the little one." And I baked some. It had been nearly 3 months since I last came by, but Clara acted like I showed up at her door every week. "Oh, God," she groaned and pushed her hair back. She brought more of her weird homemade stuff. "Rory, I told you she would show up unannounced like always. Probably wants money. Or maybe she wants to stay for dinner and pretend she belongs here." Rory walked over, wiping his hands on a towel like he had just finished dealing with something unpleasant. He looked at me from top to bottom, slowly, intentionally, the way people check the expiration date on milk they already know is spoiled. "You do not have anything better to do than ruin our weekend?" he said. "You know they have places for people your age. You could be somewhere with people who actually understand you. Why do you have to hang on to Clara like that?" I clutched the box a little tighter. "I did not come to stay. I wanted to see my grandson for a moment. I have something of Clara's I thought he might like." Clara scoffed. "You are not coming in. I do not want him influenced by your sad upbringing. You make everything look poor. You always have. You spent your whole life as a nothing nurse in a nothing hospital. And I am not letting my son grow up thinking failure is normal." I felt my jaw tremble but held it steady. "I was proud of my work," I whispered. "Well, we were not," Clara shot back. "Rory had to pick up the pieces after everything you put me through growing up. You are lucky he even lets you stand on this porch." Rory folded his arms. "That girl fought her way out of the nightmare you raised her in. Do not drag her down again." The box felt heavier. My arms ached from holding more than just cardboard. I looked past Clara into the hallway and heard a small burst of laughter echo down from the living room. My grandson, that sound alone held more love than anything his parents had given me in years. I took a step forward, instinctively drawn to it. Clara shifted sideways to block me. "Where do you think you are going?" I swallowed, breathed in through my nose, and reached for the door handle behind her. "Just to say hello. Just for a minute." Her hand shot out, but before she could grab my wrist, a voice cut sharply through the cold air from across the yard. "Ma'am, Kayla, stop, do not go in there yet." I froze. Clara jumped, startled. Rory muttered something like, "Oh, great, now the circus is here." I turned slowly and saw Mark, my daughter's neighbor, standing halfway across his lawn. He looked pale, shaken, and completely out of breath, as if he had run all the way over. He stared at me with a kind of urgency I did not understand. I felt heat crawl up my neck. God help me. I thought he was yelling because he saw Clara humiliating me and could not stand to watch it anymore. I thought maybe he was coming to scold her, or maybe to tell me I should not disturb them. Shame rose in my chest before I could stop it. "If you feel justice deserves celebration, Smash that hype button, let us keep stories like this alive, echoing far, far away. Your support helps us bring understanding and love to those who deserve it. Thank you so much. Keep listening. But as Mark stepped closer, his eyes did not look angry. They looked worried, afraid, even. His voice lowered, trembling enough for me to hear something I had never heard from him before: alarm. Kayla, he said again, quieter now. Please, do not go inside that house. Clara stiffened. Rory cursed under his breath. A chill wrapped around my spine, as if someone had just whispered a secret into my bones. I did not yet know what waited for me on the other side of that door, but something inside my chest tightened, low and deep. The kind of tightening that comes before a storm tears the roof off a house. I stood there on Clara's porch, with Mark's voice still echoing in my ears. But as he backed away and Clara's glare bore into the side of my face, a part of me slipped backward farther than I wanted, deeper than I ever let myself go. It is strange how the mind does that. One sharp moment in the present can split open the past like a cracked glass jar, and every memory you tried to seal tight comes spilling out. Mine did, all at once. I was 18 when I first walked into the old county hospital wearing the crisp white uniform my mother had ironed the night before she died. I remember the fluorescent lights, the smell of bleach and hope mixed together, and the way the head nurse smiled at me because my hands did not shake when I held my first chart. I wanted a life where I could help people. I did not know that kindness could become a curse when given to the wrong ones. I met Clara's father, Thomas, in the cafeteria. He was handsome, charming, full of jokes that made even the sternest nurses blush. I mistook that charm for gentleness. I married him before I understood the truth. The drinking came first, then the gambling, then the bursts of rage when his luck ran out. When Clara was born, I thought maybe he would soften, maybe a tiny heartbeat could fix what addiction had broken. Instead, when she cried, he called her a reminder of everything I failed at. When I cried, he called me worse. I spent years working double shifts at the hospital to buy diapers and formula because our money disappeared in smoky back rooms and bars. I took care of strangers with fevers and broken bones while trying to come home early enough to keep Thomas from waking the baby with his screaming. I never succeeded. His voice almost always won. I still remember the night I decided to leave him. Clara was 3, small enough that her whole hand could wrap around just my thumb. He had thrown a chair across the room because dinner was cold. It landed inches from her. I saw death in that moment, not mine, but hers. I packed a bag while he slept off the rage on the couch. A neighbor drove me to a women's shelter. I cried the entire ride. But the person who hated me most for leaving him was not Thomas. It was Clara. Because Thomas told her every year, every holiday, every spare moment, that I had left him not to protect her, not to save us, but because I had grown tired of being a mother. Your mom chose her job over her family, he would say, slurring his words just enough to make it believable. She did not love either of us enough to stay. Children believe what they hear most often, not what is true. By the time Clara was a teenager, she no longer remembered the broken bottles or the dents in the drywall. She remembered only that I worked nights and slept in the day. She remembered that I missed her school plays because I was in the emergency room trying to keep someone else's child alive long enough for their mother to arrive. She remembered that I smelled like antiseptic, that I wore scrubs instead of pretty suits like the mothers of her friends, that I packed her lunches in reused containers instead of store-bought boxes. She told her friends, "My mom is a night nurse. She never has time for me. She chose strangers over me. Never mind that my paycheck covered her asthma medication. Never mind that I skipped my own meals so she could have fruit in her lunchbox." To Clara, sacrifice looked too much like neglect, and when she met Rory in college, the bitterness in her finally found someone eager to feed it. Rory whispered poison into her ear. "Your mom stayed small because she was not smart enough to be anything else. She works because it is all she has. You grew past her. You do not owe her anything." He encouraged her to resent me, to reinterpret every childhood disappointment through the lens of failure. He told her that successful people cut ties with anchors, and I became the anchor, dragging at her ankles no matter how hard I tried to lift her up. When I finally saved enough to buy a small house, the one Clara and Rory live in now, it was the proudest day of my life. 30 years of double shifts, of sleeping on fold-out chairs during breaks, of scrubbing dried blood off my uniform with cheap bar soap, and at last I had a place that was mine. When Clara got married, she and Rory struggled with rent, so I told them the words I thought any mother would be proud to say. Move in, treat it like your home, pay me when you two get settled. I did not ask for rent. I did not ask for deadlines. I only asked for honesty. They paid me back with silence, and then lies. To their friends, Clara always said, "We bought our house early, we are doing well." My mother never helped me with anything. The first time I heard her say that was by accident. She was sitting on the porch with a friend, laughing over cheap wine, and I had stepped outside to get the mail. I froze when I heard, "My mom? Please." She loves to pretend she suffered for me. She did nothing. I built my life myself. I stepped back before she saw me, clutching the envelope so hard it tore under my fingers. Those words were the first crack in something inside me. They should have warned me about what she would one day become, but love makes fools of women my age. We keep believing our children will come back to us if we just stay quiet long enough. Standing on her porch now, with the cold biting deeper and Mark's voice trembling behind me, all those memories lined up like ghosts. I looked at Clara's hard eyes and Rory's smirk, and for a moment, I wondered if maybe they were right. Maybe I had failed in ways I could not see. Maybe love was not enough to undo all the hurt. Maybe I truly am a burden, I thought. And that thought settled like a stone in my stomach. Then Mark called again, louder, clearer, as if fighting something bigger than fear. "Kayla, please. I mean it. Do not go in yet." His voice pulled me back into the present. I turned toward him, the stone in my stomach beginning to crack, replaced by something else, something sharp and rising. I did not know it then, but everything that would shatter my world was waiting just beyond that threshold, and everything that would save me was standing right there on the lawn, begging me not to take another step. I clenched the box tighter, felt the edges dig into my palms, and whispered to myself, barely audible, "I have to know the truth." And with that, I stepped off the porch, heading toward Mark's house, my heart pounding like a warning bell I wished I had heard sooner. Mark's house felt different the moment I stepped inside, not because it was messy, with shoes left by the door and unfolded laundry on the couch, but because it was warm, lived in, safe in a way Clara's place had not felt in years. I stood in the entryway, clutching my box, unsure whether to sit or run back home and pretend none of this was happening. Mark motioned me toward the table where his laptop waited, the screen already glowing. His hands trembled as he reached for the trackpad. "I need you to prepare yourself," he said quietly. "What you are about to see, it is not easy." I tried to slow my breathing, but my pulse thudded in my ears. "Mark, please just tell me," I whispered. "Is my grandson?" He shook his head. "It is better if you see it with your own eyes." He clicked play on footage from one of his indoor security cameras facing the shared yard. There was Clara, in the frame, dragging her son across the living room by the collar of his shirt. The fabric bunched against his throat, his legs kicking helplessly as she hauled him over the hardwood. She looked nothing like the daughter I had raised. Her face was twisted, feral, sharp with a rage I did not recognize. "Stop crying," she snapped in the video. "You want the neighbors thinking your grandma is some crazy old bat? Keep going, and that is exactly what they will think." Before I could process the words, she grabbed a dirty dishcloth from the counter stiff, probably sour from bleach, and shoved it into his mouth. My grandson choked, sputtering, his small hands waving in panic. I felt my own stomach twist violently. Then Rory entered the frame. He knelt beside the boy, gripping his wrists tight enough to make him go still. His voice was calm, almost instructive, which somehow made it worse. "Listen carefully," he said. "If you cannot be quiet, Grandma will get taken away. Do you understand? They will put her in a home for people who have lost it, and it will be your fault." The screen blurred for a moment as my tears welled, but I forced myself not to look away. I needed to know exactly what had been happening under the roof I paid for. My whole body shook, not from age but from something deeper, older grief, fury, disbelief coiled together. Mark paused the video when my hand flew to my mouth. "There is more," he said softly. "I am so sorry, Kayla, but you need to see the rest." Before I could speak, he opened another file. This one was even more horrifying. Clara and Rory were standing over the boy as he knelt on the floor in front of them. His face was blotchy from crying, his little shoulders trembling. Clara forced him to reenact a fall, positioning his arm awkwardly, as if he had tripped. Rory crouched beside him, holding his phone like a microphone. "Who pushed you?" he asked loudly. The boy whimpered. Rory repeated the question, sharper this time. "Who pushed you?" The child's voice cracked as he whispered, "Grandma." Clara nodded approvingly. "Good. Again. Louder. And stop crying like a baby. You will thank me for this one day when your life is better because we removed her." The words hit me with a force I did not know language could carry. Mark swallowed hard. "There is an audio file too," he said. "I found it by accident. My outside mic picked up their argument last week." He clicked it. Clara's voice came first flat, icy, calculated. "Mom is old. All I have to do is tell the doctor she is confused, yelling at walls, forgetting where she is. They will believe me in a second." Rory's reply came with a humorless chuckle. "Once she gets admitted, it is over. Her accounts, the house, everything falls under your guardianship." Done. Guardianship. They were planning to erase me legally. Mark reached behind him and pulled a crumpled paper from the recycling bin. "I found this about an hour ago. I think they tossed it without realizing a copy was still here." It was a photocopy of a legal petition to declare me mentally incompetent. Clara had filled out most of the form, naming herself as my sole guardian. The signature at the bottom belonged to a doctor I once worked with, but the handwriting was off. Jagged. Wrong. "That signature is fake," I whispered. My hands began to shake badly. "I know his handwriting. I trained under him for a decade." Mark nodded. "I thought so. I am sorry, Kayla." He fumbled with his phone and pressed play on one last audio clip. Rory's voice came through, darker than before. "We just need one more incident, something convincing. One fall down the stairs and the doctor will sign anything." Clara laughed quietly. "I do not need her dead. I just need her silent." My stomach lurched. A cold sweat prickled the back of my neck. Silent. My own daughter wanted me removed like a piece of old furniture. Not dead, just erased. I felt something inside me crumble and then burn. "She is my daughter," I whispered. "My only child. I gave her everything I had. How could she do this to me?" Mark placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Because she thinks you have no one to defend you. But she is wrong. I believe you, Kayla. And I am on your side." For a long moment I could not speak. I just stared at the frozen frame on the laptop screen, my grandson looking out the window, eyes wide and pleading, like he was searching for someone who would save him. The ache in my chest grew until it became a single, focused truth. I had spent my whole life staying quiet to keep peace, but there was no peace left to keep. I wiped my eyes slowly, drew in a breath that felt both broken and brand new, and said the words that would change everything. "I will not stay silent anymore." I sat at Mark's kitchen table long after the last video ended, staring at nothing while the world inside me rearranged itself. There is a particular kind of pain that comes when betrayal is not loud or sudden but slow and accumulated, built from years of tiny moments you dismissed, trusted, excused. I felt each one of those moments resurfacing now, sharp as broken glass. I remembered the first time Clara asked me about legal guardianship. It had been almost casual, tossed into a conversation over dinner as if she had just stumbled across the concept online. "Mom," she said, swirling her fork in her pasta, "did you know older people can get someone to manage their finances if they get confused? Like a safety net. It protects you from making mistakes." I laughed, thinking she was just worried because I had turned 60. I told her I was fine and changed the subject. At the time, her tone seemed harmless. Now the memory tasted poisonous. A few months after that, she brought up banking forms. "Some people my age help their parents with their accounts," she said. "Just a simple authorization. It makes everything easier." I brushed that aside too. I thought she was being responsible. I thought she was thinking about my comfort. That is the thing about mothers, we interpret our children's intentions through love, even when they hand us a dagger. Then there was Rory. He always positioned himself as the helpful son-in-law. "Let me look at your insurance papers," he offered once, smiling warmly. "These things get confusing. You need someone younger to walk you through them." He sat beside me, pen in hand, flipping pages I never fully understood, pointing to lines and telling me where to initial. He made me feel grateful for his kindness. But sitting now in Mark's kitchen, I realized I had been signing things without asking enough questions. I had trusted him because he was family. I had trusted him because I loved Clara. Mark pulled me back into the present with a heavy sigh. "There is something else you need to know," he said, rubbing a hand across his forehead. "Something I have seen for months, but I did not put it together until now." I looked at him, bracing myself. "Clara has been leaving the boy with different neighbors from time to time," he said. "Nothing wrong with babysitting, but the way she talks when she drops him off, it is concerning." He hesitated before repeating her words. "She said to one neighbor, 'If anything happens, I will say my mom hurt him.' People always believe the elderly lose control." A cold dread climbed up the back of my neck. "She said that?" I whispered. Mark nodded, and more than once, like she was laying a foundation, preparing people to believe her if she ever needed a story. It hit me then, not just the betrayal of what she had done recently, but the long trail of smaller betrayals that led here, years of Clara shaping the world into a place where I would always be the villain. She had not just grown to hate me, she had groomed a narrative strong enough to erase me. Another old memory surfaced, one I had buried so deeply I could still smell the dust on it. Clara was 17. We were standing in the kitchen after a long argument about her grades, her new boyfriend, and her refusal to come home before midnight. She had thrown her backpack at the wall, knocking down a picture frame. I told her I did not want her destroying the house because she was angry. She screamed, then shrill, ferocious, eyes filling with a hatred I could not comprehend. "I wish you were dead," she shouted. "Then I would not have to carry your stupid last name around like a curse." I remembered the way my heart clenched, the way I told myself she was just emotional, just overwhelmed, just a teenager. I told myself she would grow out of it. But the truth was different. She had not said those words because she was young. She had said them because she meant them. The evidence was sitting now in Mark's trash and on Mark's laptop. As these thoughts swirled, I felt my chest tighten with something heavier than grief. It was the realization that I had allowed my daughter to slowly chip away at my dignity because I believed a mother's job was to endure. I endured insults, cold shoulders, dismissive remarks, disrespect disguised as jokes, accusations disguised as concern. I endured because I thought love required patience. I thought enough patience could heal anything. But patience cannot fix someone who sees your love as weakness. Patience cannot stop a daughter determined to turn you into an obstacle. And patience certainly cannot protect a grandchild trapped in a house where manipulation is the family language. A deep, cutting shame washed over me. "How could I have missed all this?" I whispered. "How could I not see what she was turning into?" Mark shook his head. "Mothers do not look for monsters in their children, Kayla. They look for hope. Hope. I used to have so much of it." I pressed my palm against the table to steady myself, feeling the cool wood under my skin. Inside me, something was shifting slowly but with certainty. A woman can only be broken so many times before the pieces rearrange into something stronger, something sharper. I thought of my grandson's terrified eyes on that video. I thought of Clara laughing about silencing me. I thought of the forged signature, the planned fall down the stairs, the lies she planted around the neighborhood. The love I still held for Clara did not disappear, but it changed shape. It hardened into resolve, painful, necessary, unmistakable. If my daughter had chosen to see me as an enemy, then I would protect myself and that little boy the way one protects themselves from an enemy, with clarity, with strength, and without apology. I rose slowly from the chair, my voice barely above a whisper, but steadier than it had been in years. "If she wants a fight," I said, "then I will give her one. Not as her mother, not anymore, but as someone who will not be erased." It was the first time in my life that I stopped choosing to be the victim. And it was the moment my fight truly began. Mark drove me to the attorney's office the next morning because my hands were shaking too much to hold the steering wheel. I kept telling him he did not need to come, that I could manage on my own. But he insisted. "You should not have to do this alone," he said. The truth was, I had spent my whole life doing everything alone, leaving a violent marriage, raising a child on a nurse's salary, buying a house, one exhausted shift at a time. But sitting there in the passenger seat, watching the city blur past, I felt the strange weight of finally being supported by someone not out of obligation, but humanity. The lawyer's office was small, tucked between a bakery and a dentist, the kind of place most people would walk past without noticing. But the woman waiting inside, Miss Hastings, had the presence of someone who did not miss a single detail in life. She stood the moment we entered, her gray blazer sharp, her eyes sharper. "You must be Kayla," she said, extending her hand. "I am very glad you came in." I lowered my gaze, ashamed. I never thought I would be here to talk about my own daughter. She guided me to a chair. "Let me make something very clear before we begin," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You are not taking your daughter to court. You are taking crimes to court. Abuse, fraud, endangerment. This is not about family. This is about safety." That sentence hit me hard, clean, precise, cutting away the guilt that had knotted itself in my chest. For the first time in days, I felt like I could inhale all the way. Mark helped me take out the laptop, the USB, the printed pages he had gathered from his recycling bin. Miss Hastings watched each piece of evidence with growing severity, her mouth pressed into a thin line. She wrote notes quickly, decisively. "The camera footage is strong," she said. "The audio proves intent. And this," she tapped the photocopied guardianship petition, "is felony-level forgery if we can locate the original. With this combination, we have grounds for emergency intervention." "Intervention?" I asked. She nodded. "We involve both law enforcement and child protection services. Your grandson's safety takes precedence over everything else. We do not give Clara and Rory a chance to hide evidence or rehearse a lie. We catch them unaware." My throat tightened. "Will Clara go to jail? If the court finds her guilty?" "Yes." I stared at my wrinkled hands. I had brought this child into the world. I had loved her through poverty, sickness, heartbreak, and rebellion. And now I sat in a lawyer's office, preparing to hand her life to the justice system. Mark placed a hand on my shoulder. "Kayla," he murmured, "your grandson needs you." That was enough. That was everything. The next call was the hardest, the call to Child Protective Services. My voice quivered as I introduced myself, but I forced every word through. "I am the grandmother," I said. I have video evidence of abuse. I need help." The agent's voice was kind but urgent, and when she said, "We are dispatching investigators," I felt something unclench in my chest. Not relief. Not yet, but possibility. Once the agency had the evidence, Miss Hastings coordinated with local police. The plan unfolded with frightening precision. Officers would wait nearby. CPS would accompany them. The goal? Catch Clara and Rory at home with the child present. Check for immediate danger, and seize any documents or devices connected to their scheme. Then came my part, my role in the trap. "You are the only one they trust," Miss Hastings said. "If you show up acting remorseful, confused, apologetic, they will reveal their hand. Predators always get careless when they believe victory is guaranteed." I grimaced. "You want me to pretend to be weak?" "To protect your grandson," she replied gently, "and to protect yourself." So I rehearsed the words I never imagined saying to my own flesh and blood. "I am sorry, Clara. I should not have come unannounced. Maybe we can talk about the future. Maybe I can update my will. Make sure you and Rory are taken care of." I practiced the tremble in my voice, the softened shoulders, the downcast eyes. I had played the role of the humble, apologetic mother all my life. This time it would serve a purpose. The plan was set for the next afternoon. When evening came, Mark dropped me home. We did not speak much in the car, and I appreciated his silence. It left space for the storm inside me. I sat on my couch long after he drove away, staring at the walls that had held so many quiet nights, so many prayers whispered without answers. I pulled out a framed picture from the shelf, my grandson, at his last birthday, frosting smeared across his cheek, his smile bright enough to warm a room. I traced the edge of the frame with my thumb. "Nana is coming for you," I whispered. "I will not let them hurt you again." But then my eyes drifted to Clara in the picture, her hand on her son's shoulder, her smile thin and forced. I remembered the baby she once was, the toddler who clung to my leg when thunder scared her, the girl who used to fall asleep on my chest, and I felt a messy, sorrowful ache tear through me. "Tomorrow," I said aloud into the empty room, "my daughter may never forgive me. She may hate me forever." I closed my eyes and let the truth settle. But she drove me here. She chose this path. I set the picture down, wiped my face, and folded my trembling hands in my lap. "Whatever happens," I whispered into the quiet, "it ends tomorrow." And for the first time in my life, I felt the fire of protecting myself burn just as fiercely as the fire of protecting someone I loved. I held the container of banana bread in both hands as I walked up Clara's porch steps, doing my best to let my shoulders slump and my gaze soften. Every inch of me felt tense, rehearsed, wrong. I had spent decades trying to appear strong for my daughter, but now strength would only warn her. Today, I needed to look small, harmless, exactly what she believed me to be. I knocked once, gentle enough to seem apologetic, but firm enough that she would hear. She opened the door, with an expression that could curdle milk. "Oh, for God's sake," she groaned. "Mom, really? You had to come ruin our weekend again?" I mustered the weakest smile I could manage. "I brought some bread I baked. I thought maybe we could talk for a moment." She exhaled through her nose sharply, like she had to force oxygen past her irritation. "Fine, come in, but do not stay long. We have things to do." I stepped into the house, feeling the air tighten around me. On the dining table, Rory sat in front of a neatly arranged stack of folders and official-looking envelopes. He did not hide them. He looked almost proud, as though paperwork itself gave him a sense of power he had never earned. My heartbeat thudded. Those were the documents, the guardianship petition, the forged signature, the plan to erase me from my own life. I recognized the manila folder, the thick packet clipped together with a black binder clip. They were preparing to turn everything in, right on schedule. Rory leaned back in his chair, eyes glinting with superiority. "Well, look who decided to behave." He nodded at the bread in my hands. "Trying to make peace with baked goods?" I swallowed. "I just wanted to say I am sorry for upsetting you both. I know I can be difficult sometimes," Clara snickered. Understatement of the century. I let the words land without flinching. That was part of the game. "I have been thinking," I said gently, stepping a little closer to the table. "Maybe it is time I put things in order. My will, my accounts. If it would help you manage things for me down the line, I could sign whatever you need." Their reaction was instant, like striking a match in a room filled with gasoline. Clara's face lit with triumph. She turned to Rory, whispering loudly enough for me to hear, "See? I told you. She is finally getting senile. One more nudge, and she will sign anything." Rory smirked and pulled one of the folders toward him. "Since you brought it up," he said, "we actually have some documents ready. Just routine things to make sure you are taken care of." Taken care of. My stomach twisted. He opened the folder and spread the papers across the table like a dealer setting down cards. "This," he said, tapping the top page, "is how we are going to look after you properly." Right then, 3 thunderous knocks shook the front door. Clara jumped. "What the?" The door swung open before she could finish. Uniforms filled the doorway, 2 police officers, a CPS investigator, and behind them, calm and unreadable as stone, Miss Hastings. The room snapped into chaos. "Clara Jameson?" one officer said, holding out a document. "We have a warrant to conduct a welfare check on your son, as well as investigate reported abuse and potential fraud against an elderly family member." Clara's jaw dropped. "What? No, 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 this is insane. Mom, what did you do? Did you seriously call the police on us?" She whirled toward me, eyes blazing. "You are a traitor." A pathetic, lonely traitor. Rory vaulted to his feet, knocking over his chair. You cannot just barge in here. You have no right. We have full legal authority, the officer replied calmly. Step aside, sir. The CPS worker was already moving through the hallway. Clara ran after her, shrieking, You will not take my son. He is fine, everything is fine. But the truth was hiding in the bedroom closet. The investigator found him curled in a ball inside, clutching a stuffed bear by the ear. His cheeks were wet, his hands shook. When the door opened, he flinched so hard he hit the back wall. The worker knelt gently, whispering to him, guiding him out with soft words and a blanket. Clara collapsed to her knees. No, baby, come here. Come to mommy. He turned his face into the investigator's shoulder and sobbed. I felt something inside me tear clean in half. Meanwhile, the officers searched the house. They seized the laptop, the hard drive, the printed guardianship documents, comparing the forged signature to the photocopy Mark saved. It did not take long for one of them to say, This is enough for probable cause. Rory snapped, You cannot take our property. He lunged toward one of the officers, chest puffed like an angry dog. The response was swift. His arms were twisted behind him, and metal cuffs clicked around his wrists. You are under arrest for obstruction and resisting law enforcement, Clara screamed. Rory, do not touch him. You cannot arrest him. Mom! She turned on me, hair wild, face blotchy, voice cracking with rage. You did this, you miserable old witch. You will die alone for this, alone and forgotten. No one needs you. No one ever did. I looked at her for a long, silent moment. My daughter, my blood, the baby I once held to my chest, the woman who had become a stranger. When I finally spoke, my voice came out low but steady. Today, Clara, I simply chose not to let myself or my grandson die slowly inside your cruelty. Her eyes widened, as if the words struck her harder than any slap. The officers guided her out. Rory followed, cursing and thrashing. My grandson watched them go with wide, fearful eyes, clutching the stuffed bear like it was the last safe thing in his world. And in that moment I understood. Something had ended today. But something had also begun. The courtroom smelled faintly of old carpet and dust, the kind of scent that clings to community buildings that have seen too many broken families pass through their doors. I sat at the petitioner's table beside Miss Hastings, hands folded neatly in my lap. My grandson sat in a quiet room down the hall with a child advocate, safe, supervised, away from the storm that was about to unfold. Behind me, neighbors filled the benches. Some I recognized, others I had only waved to in passing. But they were all here because the truth had traveled fast, and cruelty, especially cruelty toward a child, had no defenders left in this neighborhood. Clara entered first, escorted by her attorney. She wore a pale blue blouse that made her look softened, vulnerable. Rory came next in shackles until the officer removed them for the hearing. Neither of them looked at me. Clara kept her gaze down, rehearsing her tremble. Rory stared straight ahead as if daring the judge to challenge him. Judge Morales entered, calm and unreadable, and the through line of an entire life's betrayal tightened in my chest. The prosecution started with the footage. The moment the screen lit with the image of my grandson being dragged across the hardwood floor, the room changed. The air thickened. Someone behind me gasped. Clara hunched in her seat, her knuckles whitening, but she held her expression carefully. She was saving her performance for her turn. Then came the video of the staged fall. My grandson choking out the word grandma under fear rather than truth. The courtroom felt colder after that, as though walls themselves recoiled. Next, the audio. Hearing Clara's voice echo across the speakers. All I have to do is say my mom is confused, and they'll believe me, felt like being stabbed with a frozen blade. I did not cry. I could not. My body had already wept itself empty over these words. When the forged petition appeared on the projector, Judge Morales leaned forward. Miss Jameson, she said, her voice sharper than before, are you aware this doctor reported his signature stolen 6 months ago in a separate case? Clara's lips parted just an inch. Your Honor, my mother is. She has been having mental episodes. She forgets things. She invents things. This is all part of. The judge held up a hand. We'll get to your statement shortly. Next came Mark. He stood firm, though I saw the nerves in his jawline. "For months," he said, "I have heard shouting, hitting sounds, things breaking. I've heard that little boy cry in a way that didn't sound like a tantrum. It sounded like fear." He paused, voice tightening. "And Kayla, she's the one who organized the fundraiser to buy my camera system. If not for her, we wouldn't have evidence today." He returned to his seat, and I felt the weight of gratitude settle between us. Finally, Judge Morales turned to me. "Miss Kayla," she said gently, "would you like to make a statement?" I rose slowly. My knees creaked, but my voice did not. "I never wanted to stand in court against my child," I began. "I carried her, fed her, worked nights so she could have what I never had. I thought my sacrifice meant something. I thought love would be enough." Clara shifted uncomfortably, her mask beginning to slip. "But when love becomes a weapon," I continued, "when someone uses your age, your trust, your silence as tools to break you, that is no longer family. That is harm." I looked the judge in the eye. "I am not here to punish my daughter. I am here to protect a child who had no voice, and to protect myself from disappearing into the lies she built." My lawyer gave a small nod. The judge's gaze softened. Clara jumped to her feet as the judge invited her to speak. She put a hand dramatically to her chest. "My mother is mentally unstable," she said, playing desperation like a violin. "She resents my success. She imagined the whole thing and manipulated our neighbor's footage." But the judge wasn't looking at Clara anymore. She was looking at the screen, still frozen on my grandson's tear-streaked face. "Enough," Judge Morales said sharply. "Sit down." Clara did. The verdict came faster than anyone expected. "For the charges of child endangerment, emotional and physical abuse, and fraud," Judge Morales said, her voice firm and resonant, "I find Clara Jamison guilty." Clara let out a strangled sound, not quite a cry, not quite a denial, but something raw and feral. "For aiding and participating in abuse, as well as resisting law enforcement," the judge continued, "I find Rory Jamison guilty." Rory slammed his fist on the table. "This is ridiculous. She planned this. They all planned this. Remove him," the judge ordered calmly. 2 deputies escorted him out as he shouted. Next came the rulings that mattered most. "Custody of the minor child will be transferred immediately to his grandmother, Kayla Donovan," she said, under monitored check-ins from CPS. "All indications show this placement is not only safe, but necessary." I closed my eyes, breathing in the first true moment of hope in months. "And regarding property disputes," the judge continued, turning pages, "the court reaffirms Miss Donovan's sole ownership of the residence in question. Given clear evidence of attempted financial coercion, Miss Jamison's rights to contest the property are suspended for a minimum of 7 years." Clara collapsed into her chair, shoulders shaking not from remorse, but from losing control. Court adjourned. I had barely stood before. I felt a small pair of arms wrapped tightly around my leg. My grandson, the boy they had weaponized, threatened, manipulated into lies. He pressed his face into my skirt, trembling. "Nana," he whispered, "I didn't mean what they made me say. I knew you didn't do those things. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I knelt and held him, kissing his hair. "You never have to apologize for surviving," I said. My voice cracked for the first time that day. Outside the courthouse, Mark waited. Neighbors clapped my shoulder with quiet whispers of support. Someone handed me a slip of paper with a link to the GoFundMe they had created to renovate my house, fix the broken porch steps, and replace the locks Clara and Rory had ruined. Community compassion, unexpected, overwhelming, wrapped itself around us like sunlight after weeks of storms. Weeks later, my house felt like a different world. Fresh paint, new lights, curtains that fluttered gently in the breeze. My grandson sat on the floor, coloring, humming to himself, safe, unafraid, whole. I stood in the hallway holding an old photo of Clara when she was 5, missing her front teeth, her smile bright with innocence she had lost somewhere along the years. I touched the frame lightly. "I didn't win against you," I murmured. "I won against the fear you put in me. The fear that kept me quiet. The fear that kept me small." I placed the picture back on the shelf. Then, in the soft, steady voice of a woman who had finally stepped out from under decades of shadows, I said, "Revenge isn't about hurting them back. It's about finally choosing yourself when they never did." And that, my dear listeners, is how a quiet old woman finally found her voice after a lifetime of being talked over, stepped on, and pushed aside, not with shouting, not with revenge dipped in bitterness, but with truth, the one thing time cannot bury. If you stayed with me through all the twists, the heartbreak, and the long road toward justice, thank you. Stories like mine aren't easy to tell, and they're not always easy to hear, but they matter, because somewhere out there, another grandmother is sitting alone in her kitchen, wondering if anyone will ever believe her side of the story. So if you felt something tonight, anger, hope, strength, maybe a spark of your own courage, then do me a small kindness. Hit that subscribe button for Grandma True Stories. Help keep these stories alive. Help them travel farther than the people who tried to silence us. And help remind the world that age does not make us weak. It only makes our memories sharper. Thank you for listening, sweetheart. I'll be waiting for you in the next story.